We need a pilot.
I got something coming up.
You're thinking like a thief.
I'm thinking like a soldier.
Think like a leader. Let's make it worth it.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. Star Wars dropped a brand new Andor Season 2 teaser trailer. There's a bunch of footage. There's a bunch of characters that we didn't see in Andor Season 1 from Rogue One that are coming back for Season 2. Probably some of the biggest that we see in the trailer footage are Orson Krennic. That also might mean that Mads Mikkelsen will make a cameo scene as Galen Erso, because if Krennic is showing up, it means they're getting into a lot of Death Star stuff. Really big reminder too, Skeleton Crew episodes will start in December. I'll be doing episode videos for that. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the episodes, as the trailers have said that they're releasing April 22nd, so we don't have to wait that long next year to actually get episodes. Currently, it's the only Star Wars series that we know about that's coming next year. There might be some animated stuff that they'll surprise us with, but this is the only live-action thing from the movies or the shows that will premiere in 2025. All the Ahsoka Season 2 stuff doesn't start filming till next year. That'll come out in 2026, the same year that the Mandalorian and Grogu movie is coming out. They've already finished filming that. I've done a trailer video for that, so I'll post a link at the end of this. The way they're explaining Andor Season 2 is that because originally they were going to go way more seasons, there were going to be way more episodes, but the budget just got way too out of control, but the fact that people loved it so much is why they brought it back. So the compromise, as much as it sucks, is that they basically turned future seasons into like a packed Season 2, and they're going to speed run all the time between Season 1 and Rogue One. So there'll be time jumps multiple times through the season where each 3 episodes will represent a year in Cassian Andor's life going up to the events of Rogue One. So like the finale will be right before the beginning of Rogue One. There was also a bunch of D23 trailer footage that they didn't release online. I'll cover that in this video too, just because there's a lot of other characters like Orson Krennic that doesn't appear in the other official trailer. I know there's all kinds of questions about the trailer footage because one of the big things that we see in the trailer here is Cassian Andor stealing a TIE Avenger, so like we're finally seeing more of those in live action. If you're not familiar with TIE Avengers, they're like the beefed up, upgraded version of TIE Interceptors, but not as upgraded as Darth Vader's TIE Advanced. His ship, based on his own specifications, is meant to be the most advanced one that the Empire creates in the original trilogy timeline. There is the TIE Defenders, which are also meant to be crazy powerful, but the way they explained that during Star Wars Rebels before the events of the new trilogy is that the Empire decided not to fund that project, so that was mostly just Thrawn's baby. He was the person behind the TIE Defenders after the Empire decided they didn't want to pursue the project officially. If he continued to make those, it's always possible we see some during Ahsoka Season 2, but like he wasn't building them in the Peridea Galaxy when he was lost there because they were so hard up for resources. Most of the resources, it looks like he found they used to patch his Star Destroyer, the Chimera, and like that was about all they could do. So it wasn't like they were building some secret fleet in the Peridea Galaxy. He's doing that now, though, that he's back in the main galaxy, so like that's where we might see it show up. So seeing Krennic inside the Imperial Security Bureau headquarters here, it's this circular meeting room that we saw during Season 1. Not that unusual, just because he's a high-ranking officer inside their order. But while this is going on, he's probably just visiting their headquarters because he'd currently be serving as the head of the Death Star project on Scarif. The whole idea is that the Emperor originally used the Geonosians to design the Death Star based on an old Sith idea, so like the Sith originally came up with the concept of a mobile super laser. The Emperor, closer to present day, was the one who refined it into more of like a planet-looking kind of Death Star. Using the cover of the chaos that the Clone Wars brought, he actually used Dooku to get the Geonosians to design it for him without anybody finding out that he was the one behind it. They actually started construction of the Death Star in the orbit of Geonosis before Revenge of the Sith started. So remember, the Death Star is already well underway when he declares himself Emperor and then turns the Republic into the Empire. What the Empire did is that in the later phases of construction, they moved the Death Star construction project to Scarif. So presumably at that point, that's when Krennic took over and you have Galen Erso helping them perfect the super laser and all their complex systems. All the work that Galen Erso did on it later in the timeline was on Scarif. Canonically now, he's also the person that designed a way for the rebels to destroy it by creating the secret weak point with the thermal exhaust port. Like he did that on purpose so that the rebels would have a chance of destroying it. I don't think they've confirmed Mads Mikkelsen is going to have a cameo scene during season 2, but he might because there's so many big characters that are going to show up. I don't think that Jyn Erso is supposed to show up though. The whole idea of the series is that Andor is meant to be the main character, and he doesn't meet her till like the very beginning of Rogue One, and that's not supposed to happen till after the finale, so they might just tee up the idea that he's about to meet her in the finale. We also see Cyril Karn has moved up in the world since season 1, like things are looking good for him. He's wearing that clean-looking suit, like the Star Wars version of a suit with a tie. I think the idea, though, is that he's not working inside the Imperial Security Bureau. He might just be working for Dedra on the DL, like he's not an officially member of the ISB. They have that whole weirdly hilarious kink thing going on, like he simps her, but he's got this punishment fetish where like the women in his life are super dominating, but he kind of likes it, and she likes punishing people, like she gets off on punishing people. So she loves dealing pain out, and he loves accepting pain, so they have this weird BDSM relationship going on. I am sure there will be all kinds of memes during season 2. Saw Gerrera is back with his rebel cell. He was a big part of season 1. And obviously the other real big Rogue One character that we didn't see in season 1 is K2SO is back in a big way during the footage. Alan Tudyk came back to voice the character again too. The only real dialogue that we get from him in that D23 trailer is him making those really dry jokes of his about them trusting him, like proving his worth to them. You remember the whole idea is that he's basically an Imperial security droid that's been reprogrammed to help them. So part of the whole joke of the character is that his personality is like the opposite of C-3PO's. I don't know exactly what's going on here with him stealing the TIE Avenger. This might just be one of the missions that he goes on during one of the blocks of those 3 episodes, like year to year in his life. Maybe it's him just breaking into a secret Imperial construction facility and stealing one of the prototypes. That was the whole basis for the beginning of his relationship with Luthen, where he basically sold him parts that he'd stolen from the Empire from a secret facility. So it makes sense that he would be going on more missions like that for Luthen. Just starting at the beginning of some of this other trailer footage too, so they start with the shot here on Coruscant. Obviously a lot of the series takes place there because Mon Mothma is such a big character. Remember, her daughter, Leia, probably going to be some big twist with the Leia character. I think the idea is that she eventually comes to think of Leia as a surrogate daughter, maybe because ... as we theorize in season 1, her real biological daughter, Leia, winds up being killed. All because we've seen Mon Mothma much later in the timeline during the events of the original trilogy, even a little bit later during the events of the Mandalorian part of the timeline, and in all those later appearances, there's no mention of a daughter ever. No mention of her husband either, so maybe her husband also winds up dying too. I am sure there'll be a lot of death predictions by the end of the season. Like, Luthen is pretty high on my death predictions list, just because during season 1, the whole speech that he gave that everybody loved so much, like the most epic Star Wars call to action speech ever, was all about how he'd sacrifice every single thing he possibly could for the rebellion, but his life, like that's the only thing he hasn't sacrificed yet, is his life. So maybe the completion of his character arc, like when he arcs out, will be him basically dying, sacrificing himself to save someone else like Andor. But if you remember, the whole idea is that during Andor Season 1, the rebellion has not officially formed. There's still just a bunch of disparate cells all across the galaxy communicating on the DL. That's what Luthen was doing throughout the episodes. Really big connection back to the Ahsoka character during this part of the timeline too. I don't know if we're going to see a cameo scene from Ahsoka, but she was actually acting as Fulcrum during this period, the person who was helping communications between the different rebel cells. So all this stuff with Luthen and Andor is going on episode to episode in season 1. You have to imagine Ahsoka off in the background helping other rebel cells. And pretty close to this period, like not during season 1, but maybe by the end of season 2, around that time period, because we're jumping year to year so quickly, is that Princess Leia becomes the senator for Alderaan in the Senate. So maybe there'll be some kind of Leia reference by the end of the season, but they kind of avoided that during season 1. But the way they got around that in season 1 is that she just wasn't old enough to have joined the Senate yet. But remember, she's meant to be like the youngest senator in the history of the Senate. There's a lot of trailer footage that takes place in and around this giant crowd shot where it seems like there's a riot and the Empire, the stormtroopers start opening up fire on people. Whatever reason they have for being there, Cassian starts firing on the stormtroopers. Just seems like it's going to be a big action set piece just because there's so much going on here and there's so many extras on set, like so many Empire characters too. I can't quite tell who Bix is talking to in this scene. I don't think it's Andor, but she says they need a pilot and that is Andor basically that she's referring to. Then they have that funny jump cut of him inside the TIE pilot suit about to steal the TIE Avenger. This scene of him arguing with Luthen is back on Luthen's ship. When he says you need to think more like a leader, I think the idea is that he's just trying to inspire him to become more of a leader by the events of Rogue One when he becomes the actual team leader for them. If you couldn't tell too, this jacket actually looks similar to the jacket that he wears at the beginning of Rogue One too. A lot of people online thought the scene of Bix might be on Lothal, which is a big planet for Ezra Bridger where he's from. A lot of Star Wars Rebels takes place in and around Lothal. You have to imagine that Star Wars Rebels is taking place relatively close to this time period too. Both Rebels and Andor are meant to take place relatively close to A New Hope. This scene of K2SO also looks like it is on Coruscant. The other D23 trailer that we have is like potato quality, so we'll probably get an official shiny HD version in the next month or two. For the most part, you see all the same big characters returning from Season 1, but like I said, also a couple of really big ones from Rogue One that did not appear in Season 1. But if there's any other Easter eggs or references that you spot in the trailer footage that I didn't talk about in the video, write them below in the comments. And do remember that this is the last season of Andor. They're not doing Season 3. Currently, the only other live-action TV show we know they're doing besides Skeleton Crew in a couple weeks is Ahsoka Season 2. And remember, Skeleton Crew is supposed to only be one season. So after these series, there is no live-action TV unless they do Ahsoka Season 3, but supposedly there's also some unannounced live-action projects that Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are working on. Maybe they'll announce those in the next year or two. Star Wars has had a bit of a problem about actually completing projects that it announces. Like, it announces more than it actually completes, so I think they're just waiting to announce some stuff until it actually does start rolling cameras on it and it actually gets made. Probably a smart move on their part. There are a couple of really big Marvel trailers that just dropped for Thunderbolts and Captain America Brave New World. Click here for those, and click here for that Mandalorian and Grogu movie trailer. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.